Hey guys, welcome back to Wheelin' with Wally. Today I'm going to be replacing both my front and rear pinion seals. Mine are leaking pretty bad. I picked up a few Yukon pinion seals off of Amazon. They got here pretty quick. I'll drop a link down in the description for you guys. I've never used Yukon brand before, but I assume they work fine. They had pretty good reviews. I'll let you know if I have any issues with them. And before we get started, I'm going to give you a quick look at my leaks. That way you can kind of see what it looks like when you're having this issue, and you'll know if you need to change your seals. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm trying to up my game a little bit. I got a wireless mic for the camera, and then I bought a tripod for it. So hopefully I can get you some better sound quality and a little more stable camera work. If the mic's not that good, I'll toss it and we'll go back to the old way. But here's a quick look at the pinion seal information. I just picked these up on Amazon, so you can either use the link or go there yourself with this info. So now real quick, we're going to crawl under the Jeep and I'll show you what the leaks look like. So here's a quick look at the rear. You can usually see pretty heavy drips coming out of here. It'll be really wet down here. Mine is pretty bad, so kind of the whole back of the differential here is wet. And then as it's leaking, this is spinning. So you can see up there, it's just soaked. A lot of gunk and grime back there from just it sticking on there and getting flung around and then dirt getting stuck to it. So this is my worst one. The front is more of a small drip, and I'll show you that real quick so you have a comparison. But this one's pretty bad and it needs done. So here's the front for comparison. As you can see, there's just a little wet spot kind of around it and just under it. The back of the differential on this one is pretty dry, where the other one was just soaked. So this leak is not nearly as bad. It's a little newer, but we want to replace it. Since we're going to go ahead and do the rear, we're going to go ahead and do the front too and knock that out. I'll probably only show one on camera, so it'll be the same for either. So other than just having basic tools to do the job, one other thing that might help you is to have a seal puller. Now this is basically made so you can get in there and hook behind the seal and then pull it out with a little bit of leverage. I just picked this up on Amazon too, so I guess I can drop the link down in the description for this too if you want it. I think it was around 20-ish, 30 bucks. Not bad. It should make the job a lot easier, but you can do it without it. A lot of people just use screwdrivers or pry bars and it works. It's just a little bit of a struggle. So we'll see how it goes with this thing, and if I have to, I'll revert to the other ways. So the next thing to do is to disconnect the drive shaft, and that's just 4 bolts at each drive shaft, the front or the rear, or both if you're doing both like I am. Mine are 1/2-inch bolts. So I'm going to pop you on a time lapse, and I'm going to disconnect those real quick. Okay guys, with my Dana 44s, this is what goes through the yoke here to hold the U-joint and drive shaft on. So these are just 1/2-inch bolts, like I said, 4 1/2-inch bolts on each side. I popped them off. I did the front and rear already. And then after I took out one side, I went ahead and used zip ties around the drive shaft and then up around something else. Here I used my exhaust. And then I took out the other side so the drive shaft wouldn't drop down. And then I can just suspend it here without totally taking it off. And then after I got both of these out, I kind of pulled it off, had it hanging from the zip ties, and then I used some tape to go around the U-joints. That way the caps wouldn't come off and then all the bearings fall out. So that's just holding those 2 caps on. One other thing I did was mark a section of the yoke and then the differential housing and the drive shaft just so I know how they went on. I'm going to line everything back up. It's not necessary per se, but I know it works well how it is, so I want to put everything back on how it comes off just for peace of mind. So the next thing I did was take a wire wheel to clean the rust and dirt off around these threads. So now I can take a pick and I can get in here and I can count how many threads on this nut is so I can get it back on exactly where it's at, not any tighter or any looser. I'm also going to take a Sharpie and then mark the flat of the nut and the threads and the yoke all together so I kind of know exactly where I should line back up, and that coupled with me counting the threads should get me right back where I need to be. And the point of this is there's kind of a crush sleeve in here that you're tightening this down onto which kind of gives you a preload in there, and it's a lot more involved of a process and should probably be done more by an actual mechanic than some amateur like me in his garage. But basically, you have to measure that preload to get it perfect so you don't ruin your bearings in there or have it too tight. And the easiest way to do that is to just put it back on exactly how it comes off. So for people in their garage, amateurs like us, just counting the threads and lining everything up should work out pretty good for you. So I'll kind of show you what I mean by doing all of this so you can get it back to exactly how it comes off. So basically I'm going to choose this side just because this flat lines up really good right here with the yoke. So I'm going to mark the flat on this nut and then mark the yoke so I know this flat should be right here. And then to know I get it on there far enough, I'm going to use this pick and stick it down in between the threads, kind of in the low spot. And I'm going to count that as 1. And then I'm going to go over that hump, over the high spot of the thread into the next low spot. I'm going to count that as 2, and then I'm going to go over that, and then that's the last one, so I'm going to count that as kind of 3. So 1, 2, 3. So I know that this flat should line up here, and I should have 3 of those threads in the way that I'm counting the threads. So that should get me right back where I take it off at. And that should make it have the exact same preload it has now, not too loose, not too tight. And then finally, this is a 1 1/8 nut on here, so I'm going to go ahead and start pulling these off. And once you pull this off, you can slide the yoke off, and then you can get to this leaking seal in here. So now I'm going to go ahead and do it for real. So the next thing is to take the nut off. I'm going to use my impact with that, what was it, 1 1/8 inch, yep, socket. So got the nut off. Now we're going to pull this off. I did mark this side, right? Yeah, okay. I marked the yoke up there. So now with that off, you can get to the actual gasket. Or seal, I mean, not gasket. So now I'll grab my tool and start tearing away at it. So here's the tool, and I guess we just go for it. The next step is to clean off this seating surface for the new seal, and once you get that clean, we can move on to putting the seal in. So next you'd want to take your new seal, and it's always good to kind of pre-lube the dry rubber on these seals, so if you can get a little bit of the gear oil, kind of rub it on where anything's going to push through on the rubber. And then I'm going to do this little red ring, which is kind of the outer seal. So this red ring will be what pushes up against this inside piece here to give you the seal. So you'll want it facing this way. And then I'm just going to use a rubber mallet to kind of tap around it. Okay, so that is pretty much seated. I'm going to grab a metal hammer real quick just to gently tap around the edges to finish kind of seating it. Now we move on to reassembling. It's nice and lubed up. So we take our nut here. I'm actually too lazy to finger tighten. I'm going to run it down gently. Okay. So after the nut was tightened down, I went ahead and checked the threads to make sure I had it back to where it was when I first started. Kind of shook it, made sure everything was nice and tight, and then I took a light and I checked the seal to make sure nothing was leaking, and then I knew it was time to move on. That's pretty much the hard part done there. Now all you would do is to put your drive shaft and U-joint back on here and then re-bolt it on, and that would be the job done. I still have to do the front, but I'm not going to make you watch me do it because it's exactly the same as this. Well, all right, guys, that finishes up how to replace a pinion seal. So it's really not that difficult of a job as long as you take your time to mark it out so you can get the preload back to where it should be. But yeah, I guess I'm just going to roll under here and finish up on the front pinion seal. If you guys like anything you see on my Jeep or you have any other questions about how to work on your TJ, be sure to go check out the rest of my content. See you on the next one.